Good morning, everyone. Pam Jacobson, your host of Three Things You Need to Know. Welcome. Welcome to anyone new who's joining us maybe for the first time this week. We are 7 weeks into our Rejuvenate, Repair, Reset series, how to create your best health in 2021, which I believe is a very worthy goal, especially given that we're in the middle of a pandemic that is still raging on. But for those of you just joining, this is a program that's been going on for several months, and I strongly encourage you, when you have the time, to go back and look at some of the very early shows where I laid out some really specific groundwork, how to optimize your health function, and that's really a critical, piece of achieving your perfect health in 2021. So please go back and take a look. But so today, as I said, we're 7 weeks into our new year and our Rejuvenate and Reset series. And I wanted to pause today and take a moment because I've been getting a lot of questions. And so today I'm going to do it more as an Ask Me Anything style. If you're on live watching and you have a question, please type it in the chat box. If you're joining later, all of my contact information is there available to you in the chat box. So you can reach me through email, you can reach me through the phone, you can reach me through my website, or you can just simply comment on the video. I do get a notification anytime someone comments, and ask your question, and I'll be happy to answer any questions any of you have on any subject related to health. And if I can't get you the answer or give you the answer, I will certainly help you do the research to get your answer. So what I did with the questions that came in is I categorized them. As most of you that have been following me know, I'm really passionate about the Health Foundation, and I work in sort of a 4-pillar system. And I've kind of divided the questions up in those pillars, so to speak, to kind of make this organized in a way that you'll be able to take this information and do something with it. I hope that you find other people's questions relevant to maybe some of your own experience. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the number 1 pillar that I've talked about extensively, which is the sleep pillar, right? It is the most important because it is the only time the body repairs. I've given it just a tremendous amount of information over the last several months on sleep. So please do go back. I even interviewed a sleep researcher in the past. So please go back and look at those. But today, the question that I wanted to address that I get frequently is, I fall asleep, but why can't I stay asleep, right? I wake up 1 or 2 times during the night, and then I end up waking up in the morning feeling as if I'm not rested. And we all will have these experiences. And for some of us, that happens on a very regular basis. And for some of us, it happens every single night. And it is very disturbing to your quality sleep and ultimately impacts your ability to repair. So the first thing to know is that there are multiple reasons. The list is probably so long I couldn't list them all here. And there's probably even many reasons that we don't even know or understand. So there's not just one reason why people don't stay asleep. But some of the more common ones that you do have control over: having a large meal too close to bed, drinking alcohol, large amounts of alcohol regularly, especially within a couple of hours of going to bed. But even just a glass of wine an hour before bed can disturb your sleep. You can fall asleep fine, but staying asleep can become a real problem. Hormone imbalances, whether that is in postmenopausal women, the sex hormone imbalances between estrogen and progesterone, but even in premenopausal women and even in men, we can have hormonal balances in other hormones such as adrenal hormones, cortisol, for instance. Exercising too close to bed, because we do raise cortisol. Eating a high carbohydrate meal or snack or like a bowl of ice cream can create problems later in the night with blood sugar management. One of the biggest reasons for sleep issues in a lot of us is a sleep partner that has a lot of disturbing behaviors like snoring, or maybe they leave the TV on all night. And then another big one, and I just did a podcast with Tom Ferry last week, and the theme of the podcast ended up being transitions, right? What did I learn through the pandemic? And what I recognize is that with being home now so much and having everything happen within this couple of thousand square feet on a daily basis, what it made more challenging was the ability to transition, right? Transition from my morning routine to a work routine, to an evening routine, to a sleep routine. Many of us struggle with those kinds of transitions already. And so I think the isolation and the being at home all the time has really challenged our ability to transition. And sleep and being able to stay asleep is really impacted by what happens during our day, whether we manage our stress well, whether we transition from one segment of our day to another, how much time we're in front of our computer with blue light. So, and these are all things that if you knew about them, you could do something about them. So I think it's important, if you are one of those people who's waking during the night and it's consistent, I would look at this list of things and see how many of these things maybe apply in your situation, right? Are you doing your wind down transition to sleep at night, right? 30 minutes before bed, turning off electronics, starting to move away from brain, involving activities, turn off your television that are going to calm the nervous system to transition. Are we, cutting off our alcohol long enough before bed? Are we being careful about the foods we eat in the evening? Just all of those things I mentioned, right? Not exercising too late. I would look at that list and see how many of those things you could tick off that list and how much of a difference that made. Certainly, if you've done all of that and you feel like you have a really pristine transition and prep for sleep and you're still struggling, then maybe it is a hormone imbalance. And then that's the time to really maybe work with somebody that is in my field that does what I do, where we can help evaluate and potentially treat that. So sleeping medication is not the answer. It does not provide for the deeper levels of sleep. It does not promote repair. So if you're having trouble sleeping medication is not the answer. Okay, so that was a sleep category. Stress response management. The question is, and I do get this question a lot because, and it's always asked this way, do I really have to meditate? If you have that reaction to the thought of meditating, that gives me a clue right there as to just how badly your stress response is, how badly mismanaged or unmanaged your stress response is. Because the reason why we would have that kind of reaction to the thought of something that is intended to be so balancing and calming for the nervous system, the reason why we would have that negative reaction to that is because the nervous system is so overwrought that the thought of stopping, you're in that jungle and you're running from that lion, the possibility of even sitting still in something like a meditative process seems very anxiety provoking. And actually, I have patients that are absolutely unable to meditate. They actually become physically agitated, even feeling, sick and highly anxious when they try to stop. And that is really because of that lion in the jungle syndrome. So the answer to that is no, you don't have to meditate. And in fact, if you're somebody who has that feeling about it or actually has that sort of physical reaction, then what you need to do is to engage in things that will not agitate the nervous system. Here's what I would say about stress response management. The most important thing to understand, or the most important thing to do, is an intentional deep breath. I've said this before, the only signal really to the nervous system that you're not in danger is taking a deep breath. Because if you really were in danger, it would not be physically possible for you to take a deep intentional breath, right? We're breathing shallowly because we should be either fighting or fleeing from whatever the danger is. So when you use deep intentional breathing, it will signal the nervous system that you're not in danger and actually allow the nervous system to normally transition into its parasympathetic side, which is what we call rest and digest or relaxation mode. So it does take deep breathing. Meditation, of course, focuses on breath, but you can just simply sit and intentionally take deep breaths, right? Do a 4-square breathing pattern, or you can look up all kinds of breathing exercises. You could sit right at your desk in front of your computer with your eyes open, as if you were working, and do 5 or 6 deep breaths. And it would begin to calm the nervous system. And, it's going to be little baby steps like that for those of you that really struggle with the idea of meditating or other types of relaxation techniques that use breathing, like yoga. For those of you that really struggle with that, you're going to have to start somewhere, and intentional breath would be a place to do that. And again, if you're sitting in your chair in front of your computer and your eyes are open, your nervous system is not going to it's not the same as when we meditate and we close our eyes. The nervous system's instantly concerned. Why are you sitting still with your eyes closed? We're in trouble. You should be running, right? And you can see already you start to feel really agitated. But if I'm sitting here and my eyes are open, but I'm intentionally taking deep breaths, instantly the nervous system's like, oh, okay, she's really okay. We don't need to continue to be in this mode. We can flip over to this mode. So that's my answer on stress response management. No, you don't have to do meditation. What you have to do is deep breathe. You figure out how to make that work for yourself until you get to a point where you really could close your eyes and maybe really have a meditation, because it's an amazing experience. And then another question in this category that I really wanted to address, because last week I interviewed Jennifer Tosian, who is the creator of the Subliminal Vision Board app that I've been using for years. And a question came from that episode: is visualization stress response management? Well, I would say it can be. But the way that I view visualization is, and let's just use the goal that we all have in this series that we're doing, which is I want to have my best health. I want to create my best health, my perfect health in 2021. I'm taking the time this year to devote to optimizing my health. So, and as I said before, I think that's a really worthy goal, particularly given the pandemic and the health pressures that we have on ourselves globally. So that's our goal, is health optimization. But in order to reach a goal, we really have to be able to visualize the destination. And the analogy I often use with my patients is, it's Monday morning and you walk out into the garage and you get in your car, but you have no idea where you're going. So you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to sit in the car, right? Because your car can't take you where you need to go or want to go unless you're really clear about where you're going, right? So I see visualization as the destination, right? If I am clearly visualizing in my mind's eye where I want to be. So my perfect health in 2021, what does that look like? What does that feel like, right? As Jennifer talked last week, it's important you have to make it come to life. It has to become real in the mind's eye. Everything from the way it looks to the way it feels to the ability to smell it and taste it and have a sensory experience is all of the things that she put into the Subliminal Vision Board app, right? Is the ability to create that vision in a visual way, a sensorial way. She added sounds, she added movement in picture, just an amazing app for helping you, a tool that can help you create that visualization. So the visualization is the destination, right? Once we know where we want to go, we can program our GPS system to get us there. And programming the GPS system are the things I'm talking to you about every week, right? How do we optimize our sleep so our body can repair so we move toward our best health? How can we manage our stress response and get out of the jungle and call off the lion so that we can move toward our destination of perfect health? How do we fuel our vehicle, our body, to get us to our destination? How do we keep our vehicle fine-tuned, right, by movement and exercise so that we can reach our destination? What other kinds of assistance might we need as a unique individual? What other issues might I have that are going to stop me? So that's what I think of as your GPS system, all of that work and those things that you will do that are going to move you toward that destination. So the question was, is visualization stress response management? Well, certainly you can make it part of your stress response management. I think that we are naturally more content, balanced, happy when we have a very clear vision of where we're taking our reality, what we're creating for ourselves. But again, if stress response management is primarily about intentional deep breathing, then what I would say is, if you're using the Subliminal Vision Board app and you're using the 5-minute subliminal exercise, when I do that exercise, I do it following a 15-minute meditation. And so I'm already in that very suggestive, relaxed mode. The nervous system is kind of in the rest and digest mode. Then I will continue to use my intentional deep breath while I am looking at my vision board and letting the feelings and the emotions and the sensory experience wash over me during that time frame. So you can make it part of that. But you have to understand that deep breath is going to be a piece of that. Otherwise, if you're just, looking at your vision board and doing your take 5, and then I don't think it takes the place of intentional breathing or the tools of intentional breathing that can be helpful, like yoga and meditation and biofeedback and things like that. Okay, so exercise is pillar number 3, or movement of the body. The question is, and it's a pretty natural question most people have, like how much and how often? I'm like so busy, I don't have time to do it, which is really not true. Most of us have very much more control over our schedules now than we ever have. Still, even though a lot of us are returning to our offices and schools are starting to open. But now is really the time to get a handle on this, right? How am I going to make movement? If that's my GPS to get me to the vision, how am I going to make that? I'm myself up to win every single time. So if I say I'm going to do yoga every day for an hour, I'm not going to probably win, right? Because I know that I probably won't do it every day for an hour. I don't have a whole hour block of time every day. And I can't see myself being somebody that would do the same thing every day. So the important thing is to first examine your own personal barriers and situation and time, and come up with a plan for movement that works for you. I feel like a winning situation is going to be one where you perhaps do short forms of movement throughout your day, right? Here in my office, a rebounder, a small trampoline nearby that every hour a little timer goes off and I get up from my desk and I march in place on that for 2 or 3 minutes, right? So, and then I've got a break in the middle of the day where I could go outside and walk around my neighborhood, or I could go up and down the stairs, or just do a 5-minute little workout here by my desk, right? And you can Google 5-minute office workouts. And then later on, when I have some time in the evening, maybe I do a bike ride, or I do a yoga class, or I do something a little bit longer. But on the days where that's not going to happen, I've already done movement throughout my day, right? So I think it's important to always think about, how could I win? Because the more times you lose, the less amount of motivation you're going to have to continue. So the answer is, how often? Every single day you should be moving. Every day, right? How much? Well, that depends on a lot of factors. It depends on what your goals are for movement. If it's to maintain the body, you don't need to build muscle, you're not looking to train for something, then it could be, something as simple as walking, a couple times a day, maybe doing a little bit of strength and a little flexibility a couple times a week, yoga, or something like stretching, something like that. For those of you who are really like, I want to run a 10K, or I'm thinking about running a half marathon, you're going to have to do more. So it really is dependent on what your goals are. But I think for basic health maintenance and health optimization and creating the perfect health in 2021, you need to move yourself on a daily basis. And I would recommend making that in small bursts sort of throughout the day, because the most current studies on exercise show that small bursts throughout a period of time has the same or even better effect in many cases than taking a whole block of time, like an hour and a half, to do like a gym workout. So exercise, obviously super important. You can look at the studies on exercise. It is probably one of the most important things we can do for not only maintaining good health, but certainly creating good health. Diet. So there's a million questions about diet, guys. Here's what I tell my patients. I never start with diet. Almost probably 95% of the time, a new patient calls me to want to know what my situation is. And I always ask, what are your goals? And absolutely 100% of the time, almost, it's, I need to lose weight. Until we understand that weight is simply a symptom of things that have gone awry, we're going to have a hard time, because the answer to that for most people is, I want to do a special kind of diet. The reality is, every single diet out there can work or not work. And most of the time they don't work. And the reason why they don't work is, if we go back to the lion in the jungle and the fact that you aren't doing the work in pillar number 2 to manage stress response because you're so stressed you can't meditate, and you're not doing deep breathing. If you think about this for a minute, if you're running in a jungle 24 hours a day from something that's trying to kill you, you're going to need a heck of a lot of calorie especially glucose-based calories, to keep the body in nutrition, right? So diet is worthless. So the question I had, so that's sort of my primer to don't start with diet. However, diet is one of the pillars, and I do have questions being posed there. So I want to make sure that we're addressing that. So the question was, it makes me laugh a little bit because I do get this question actually a lot. What kind of, I like to have toast in the morning for breakfast. What kind of bread is the healthiest? So, and again, it just goes to the lack of education and understanding that most of us have around how to properly fuel our bodies. We get no training on nutrition. You don't learn it, certainly not in our home, right, from our family, not in our communities, our schools. It's just, most of us don't learn anything about nutrition until we have some kind of health issue, and then we think diet is going to save us from ourselves, right? So, first of all, I'm going to go on record, and this may, irritate some that watch this, but there is no healthy bread, because bread is a processed food, right? It takes a lot of undoing of natural things and then slamming it all back together to create it. I don't care what kind of bread it is. Bread is a processed food, high in carbohydrates, regardless of the ingredients. And, but is it a bad thing? Not necessarily. I think, to pull one thing out of the diet and say, is this bad or is this good? It doesn't make sense. We're all individual. We all have different needs and different already existing health issues that may dictate whether something is better or not better for you. And one food makes no difference. It's the context of the food within the day, right? So if you were eating a slice of toast in the morning, maybe you put some avocado on it and some sprouts or something, and the rest of the day you eat, several handfuls of veggies and lots of really good fats, and you've exercised and you've done all these other things, your one piece of toast in the morning with avocado and sprouts on it had no deleterious effect. But if you sit in front of a computer all day and you don't move your body, and that bread became several pieces of bread, in addition to a bunch of other really processed, high carbohydrate, poor fat containing foods, then bread becomes a very unhealthy option for you. So I think when you look at nutrition, you have to have a global look. You have to understand that it's very individualized depending on the needs of the person, and that you can't look at any one food. You have to look at it in the context of the day of food consumption. So I'm a big, big advocate for food tracking because I hate it. It's a pain in the butt. I feel just like you do. I hate that. Oh my God, she's going to have me track my food. How boring. But it is one of the fastest behavior changing things for myself and for my patients. When you actually tune into the reality of the choices you make on a daily basis, and you begin to understand how they impact the context of the nutrition through the day, you can't unsee that. So every time you eat that slice of bread, and you know that it contains 25 grams of carbohydrates, and your carbohydrate goal for the day is to be under 100, you have to decide, is that worth it? Or would I rather spend that here? So I think that tracking can be very helpful. There's lots of apps out there. I think MyFitnessPal is still free. I like Stupid Simple Macros. I've talked about it before. I just think it's a brilliant database. It makes tracking food pretty easy. It allows you to share the data with others. But do it for a week, and it's the greatest education you'll ever get. And you will go, oh my God, I thought I was eating pretty healthy, but look, I'm like 350 carbohydrates. I don't get anywhere near my protein, and I'm about halfway to where I need to be for my good fats. And that will help you begin to create the right approach for yourself and what your goals are. And more importantly, become aware of how you feel, right? When I eat X, how do I feel in the hour or two after I eat that? Do I get bloated? Do I lose my energy? Do I just feel kind of crappy? Does it make me not feel, alive? So that's my answer to, is bread healthy, right? It's crazy to think about just one food, right? I mean, you could say, is an apple healthy? Well, when you just look at an apple, yes. But in the context of a day, if I've already eaten 250 grams of carbs and now I'm going to shove an apple in there, it's probably not the best choice, right? So think about it that way. Supplementation. I get a million questions about, how do I know what supplements to take? And Nobody knows. And I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of science, there's a lot of ongoing science, there's a lot of conflicting information. But the reality is that there's very little data to support that any nutrient or supplement out there is the amazing be all end all, that it extends life, that it completely solves this problem. I don't think you're going to find any information or data out there. We've got little bits and pieces of evidence. We certainly clinically in situations like mine over the last 20 years have anecdotal evidence, and I certainly have my own personal experiences. But I have over the years come to a place where I do feel that there are basic data need I'm sorry that the connection keeps going in and out, guys. There's nothing I can do about it right at this point. But I think that there is a basic list, and I would say that list is going to be first and foremost, given the current pandemic situation, vitamin D. And I would take vitamin D separately from any others, because if vitamin D is in another compound like a multivitamin, you're generally getting a really small dose of vitamin D. I would say 5,000 international units a day is a good way to start with vitamin D, and then make sure you get your levels checked so that you can monitor that. I generally suggest that my patients be somewhere between 70 and 80 in their blood lab report. Anything lower than that, I think there is evidence to suggest that we don't have all the benefits going on for us for vitamin D, especially immune benefits. A good multivitamin that has the whole B complex, that has your basic mineral supplements, and that maybe has some of your antioxidants, like alpha lipoic acid, things like that. So, and there's some good ones on the market. Anytime you want to ask questions about supplements or want to know what I think are some of the better brands and how to get them, you can just reach out to me offline, and I'm happy to help you figure that out. But I do think most of us need a potent multi, because it is, it's hard these days to get enough nutrient density from our food supply. Many of us have really poor gut functions. So even when you do take something, you're not absorbing it or breaking it down. And so certainly sublingual under the tongue forms or liquid forms oftentimes are better absorbed. So I think a vitamin D, a multi, essential fatty acids in the form of fish oil or omegas that come from maybe algae, for those of you who are only focused in a plant-based diet. But omega 3s in particular are super important for inflammation, for body repair, for the brain. There's a tremendous amount of research going on here. I'm just listening to a podcast about Alzheimer's disease and the importance of omega 3s, even though the studies can't prove at this point that when we take them as a supplement, they actually can get to the brain. I do believe it's partly just because it's very hard to study that. So I think a daily, fish oil, and what you want to look for there is the milligrams of the acids EPA and DHA, and those should come out around 1,000 milligrams combined per capsule. So there aren't many products out there that have that level of potency. And you want to make sure it's pure, right? Because if you're consuming that much oil and it's rancid, which many of these big box products are, you're creating more trouble than you're solving. So a really potent fish oil, I'd say at about 3,000 milligrams a day of combined EPA, DHA. A probiotic, something broad spectrum, is, I believe, important. Probiotics don't necessarily, well, it depends. There are some that are treatment specific that can help to repopulate and reproliferate. But most of the time I think of as a probiotic as to fill in the gaps, right? It doesn't necessarily ultimately fix the gap, but it gives us what we need to on a daily basis. So if you're going to use a probiotic, you kind of have to take it consistently. And hopefully you're working on gut health so that eventually, it is helping to repopulate your own good bacteria. And then I think from that, outside of that, it becomes an individual thing, right? Are you someone, I put most of my menopausal women or my females that are struggling with hormone issues on liver support. Your liver is your biggest detoxification organ. But this is where I think in the beginning of this series, I talked about to reach out to myself or Grace to let us help you figure out what was the best approach for, getting to your perfect health this year. And did you need to be on a detox or a cleanse or a rebuilding program or a metabolic reset? There's lots of different things. So you can reach out to me offline for those kinds of things. But I think vitamin D is critically important. Fish oil is critically important. A good potent multi, a probiotic. And then outside of that, I think it just depends on the individual and what's going on with them. So hopefully that answers for you. COVID, I've had a lot of questions about COVID. How do I feel about the vaccine? And I've been, to this point, a bit quiet about that, simply because I think there's just so much controversy out there. And yes, there's so many things we don't know and we don't understand about the virus itself. I understand enough from the research I've done to know that I certainly do not want to get it. And I have also seen, even in my own patient population, that those who have gotten it continue to suffer the effects of it long after the virus itself is gone, when they're testing negative. So I do believe there's some long-term issues that we don't yet completely understand what they're doing in the body. I have also spent a lot of time listening to the researchers I trust on the vaccine and how it was created, particularly the mRNA vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer. I think the Johnson & Johnson AstraZeneca vaccines are the traditional vaccine approach, where they're using the actual virus, an attenuated or not living virus. But the mRNA is different. They're not putting the virus into the body. It's more of a almost giving the immune system the recipe to be able to recognize and create a defense for the spike protein that allows the virus to replicate. So it's a bit of more of a novel approach, or a new approach to doing vaccine. And yes, we don't know necessarily if there's I think mRNA is something we really understand and we've used in a lot of other technologies, but it's been, I think, the first approach maybe for a vaccine. And there are those out there that are concerned, is there a long-term effect? Could we have a problem later on? And I don't know that you can necessarily answer that. You could ask that question about just about any new drug or any new product, anything that's released. It's not until we have many years of experience to be able to look back and see. But I personally feel like vaccination, I'm not a big vaccine proponent or opponent. I do believe that we're a nation that is largely significant disease free because of our vaccination process, right? We have eliminated many significant disease states that just a couple hundred years ago killed people at very young ages. So, we have seen the widespread positive effects of vaccines. I do believe that there probably are some negative aspects of especially early vaccines, where we weren't so concerned about all of the other stuff that was put in. There's a lot of attention paid to that now. So I think, with all the publicity around vaccines, I felt like this one was pretty closely scrutinized. And so that all led up to my personal comfort, if you will, in making a decision that I would seek to personally use the vaccine. So I've been getting a lot of questions from my patients who have, trusted my input and my advice over the years. And my answer has been, I support using the COVID vaccine. I know many of my colleagues do not and are very vocal about that. But I do see it as a pathway to getting a handle on what's going on. And I personally am more concerned about getting the virus than I was about any effect from the vaccine. So that's my stance. For what it's worth to all of you, I can certainly give you my resources if you're interested in listening to the researchers that I listened to that gave me the level of comfort I needed to believe that the vaccine was effective. Number one, I'm not going to take it if it's not going to be effective, and that it was, to the best of our ability to ascertain today, that it was safe. So anyway, that's the scoop there. I hope that you found this helpful. I will pause every several weeks to do a similar thing where I could just kind of answer your questions and get everybody caught up. But in the meantime, if you have questions, please, this is a live show every week. So you can jump on and ask your questions, or you can just simply reach me through one of those other venues and let me know what you want me to talk about and what questions you might have. And so with that, I'm going to sign off. I hope you all have an amazing week, and I'll see you right back here next Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Take care, everyone.